So I am jet lagged out of my ass, so probably I have a bigger excuse to saying that I am tired than even you, oh great man who saveth thousands of lives only this morning in a single minute. But I came back from the U.S. After spending 10 days there with my girlfriend's family. I was in New Jersey, I saw New York, I saw Philadelphia, I saw Washington, D.C. again, and this was the first time that I spent such a long period, let's call it, even though 10 days is nothing. So I learned a few new things about the country, I guess, which are not really new in any way per se, but for example, you watch the news about the opioid crisis in the U.S., et cetera, but it's completely different when you're walking through New York and you're more careful.
Even the Northeast, they have I thought this was like a Midwestern thing.
Probably it's everywhere, man. It's people completely alienated from their life, thrust into extreme poverty, have the unfortunate access to something that will make them not feel fucking horrendous, and then they get hooked and it goes down the snowball effect. But I was genuinely trying to I was avoiding potholes less than I was making sure not to accidentally step on a passed out person every fucking 20 meters. It's that bad? Yeah, it's fucking strange. It's one thing to read about it online, etc., and I knew exactly what was happening, but it's a completely different scenario when you see it right in front of you. It is exceptionally strange, but not all things are negative. I ate some great food. I changed my opinion on American beer, I have to say. It's watered down piss, but I kind of fuck with watered down piss. I'm old now, okay? I don't want to get bloated and want to piss every 20 seconds.
Are they lower alcohol content?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why we call them watered down. Yeah, and they're not as carbonated, so you don't get as bloated, I guess.
U.S. versus European beer alcohol content. Yeah. Let's see.
And the entire time I was there, I was always give me a Bud Light, and I was talking like a proper chud, brother. Yes, brother. I was referring to everybody as brother, and I think the locals found it kind of annoying, even though they were immigrants originally. But no, great food, decent booze, very, very polite, very welcoming people. Americans, how about you do a little bit of communism and less imperialism, and I can kind of fuck with you, okay? I know this, I'm doing a LARP right now, but I don't know, Yanks themselves, not bad, not bad.
They're friendly people. Yeah. When you meet them in a non-confrontational setting or non-imperialist setting, at the very least, they're very sociable, easy to get along with. Sometimes a little bit fake.
Very, very extremely fake. Fucking painfully, insanely, brutally fucking fake. What are you talking about? A bit fake? Jesus fucking.
Yeah. On the other hand, when you walk through, I don't know, Eastern Europe, people are the complete inverse of that. They are blank face, they will not give you the time of day, which is not my cultural background either. People are a little bit happier than that. But when you interact with Americans, they're just hi. Apparently, from what I've heard from people who have been to the US, if you sit on a bus next to the few buses that exist in the US, if you sit on a bus next to an American, they'll strike up a conversation next to you.
Yeah, we went to a bar in New York somewhere around Central Park, and there was just these two ladies that immediately started very positively commenting on the food I ordered, and I was kind of ignoring them, but I guess that was a social cue that I should start talking to them, because they were getting louder and louder, and I was like, what the fuck? And then I just turned to look at them because I was trying to ignore it, and my eyes meet directly with these two very nice, polite white ladies from the Midwest, and they immediately go oh, so where are you guys from? And I'm like, oh God, okay. Yeah. So the entire time she wanted to talk to me. Okay, I get it. To me and my girlfriend, whatever. It wasn't a romantic thing. They just wanted to strike up a conversation. And we spent 10 minutes talking. But that's the thing. An Eastern European doesn't give you the light of day, but then you actually start talking to them and they actually start giving you the light of day, and they have plenty to say. These two ladies, absolutely lovely, but they just wanted to talk for the sake of talking. They didn't want to learn a new thing or or meet a new friend.
Yap.
Just yap. Everybody's just yapping, saying words. Everybody's fucking eating all the time. Everybody has to be consuming things. Okay?
Yeah, what else is there to do?
These two lovely kids grew up like proper Americans to these immigrant parents of the people who I was visiting and so on. They would just ask for ice cream and fucking soda every 10 minutes. They would get ice cream, an hour would pass. Can I get on it? We are in the Metropolitan Museum. You're looking at some fucking ancient Japanese armor that's probably been stolen like 100 years ago. It's fucking impressive. Okay, you're traveling through time, bro. Can we leave so I can have a hot dog? What the fuck? Shove that hot dog up. No, okay, I can't say that about a fucking 12-year-old child. They just need to eat all the time. And, dude, are they obsessed with fucking air conditioning? And it's probably ironic I'm talking to fucking Iraqi about Americans being obsessed about air conditioning. But it's okay for you to walk through the heat for like 5 fucking minutes. It's they take fucking cabs everywhere, or like we literally would walk and they would stand next to a AC, like a place with an AC, and they would wait for a person to open the door so that the AC comes out and cools them down. Like constant, non-stop fucking eternal complaining. But hey, it's the American way of life.
I like how this started as an anthropological study of Americans and then just turned to unbridled rage. Hold on. You went to these places, the middle of the summer, it's hot. The places where there is air conditioning, do they have it maxed out so it's like 14 degrees or something? It's ice cold when you enter the air-conditioned areas, or is it a reasonable air conditioning?
Depends. Like the corporate world back when for example, in Miami, everything felt like you're entering a fridge that's supposed to keep dead fish, not human beings. Here they kept it at like 22, 23 degrees, chill shit, okay, 24.
That's all right.
And I kind of fuck with it. Yeah, fuck the planet or whatever. I gotta keep my house built out of wood at 24 degrees for like 190 days a year, etc.
I don't understand Americans. I genuinely do not understand Americans. Build with proper fucking materials so you can either insulate in the heat or keep it cool. What the fuck?
Yeah, there's pluses, there's minuses, blah blah blah. They also I changed my mind also on the car shit. Obviously, fucked up infrastructure. You can't go buy a fucking tomato without entering your massive pickup truck. But if you look at it differently, like when you accept the fact that the infrastructure is not really developed for human beings, but for 4x4s, right? Then it doesn't look like that many cars. What do I mean by this? Like, imagine a random central street or even outskirts of, I don't know, a random central European city. You'll see like 50, 100, 120 people walking, right? I'm walking over here while while in New York, the US, where I'm walking over here, nobody's walking anywhere, so they're in their cars. So if you see, like in another country, oh my God, there's 160 cars like driving in unison down a highway. That's fucking what the hell? That's a lot of traffic. That's a lot of traffic. But in the US, it's not strange because that's just 160 people that went out for a walk, right? Or went to buy tomatoes, right? Like it's once you start looking at it that way, it doesn't look like there's too many cars on the street because nobody walks.
Dude, the funniest thing to me is that Americans will go, let's go for a walk, and they'll take their car to drive to an area to go walk.
Yeah.
It's the funniest thing. All right, like I know why JT is on this podcast now, because this will just turn into shitting on Americans, or at least the conception of what an American is and what the United States. I've never been. I have no idea. All this could be nonsense. What Hugo's saying.
I'm not sure you should go because I think you would lose your fucking shit. Okay,
Habibi, if I see the reason my country was destroyed for chapped and fucking cracked concrete roads, I'm when they blow up the pipeline, I'm gonna figure that out, but on American soil. I don't know what to tell you. Oh my God. Genuinely, like, whatever. American infrastructure bad is a tired point. Americans fat is a tired point. The AC bit I didn't know, though.
And there's another bit you might not know. Like it's not only do they get like higher salaries on average in most places, and we always like don't give shit to our governments like other imperial periphery capitalist states, because you're like, shit salaries, but also relatively low prices. My dude, they have this place called fucking Marshall's where you can buy t-shirts that are $200 for $10. Shit, except the restaurants, bars, clubs, and going out, the adaptiveness of the U.S. market for just commodities is wild. Most shit, so much shit is cheap. So much shit is much more expensive. But for example, in New Jersey, so much shit is much cheaper than it is in this fucking Balkan country where I'm at, where the average fucking salary in the capital city is around $1,000 a month. How can it be cheaper in New Jersey? That is absolutely fucking wacky. Absolutely, insane overproduction. So they don't have anyone to sell it to, and then they sell from previous season, etc., for $10 and $15. And you see these zombie-like, and I can say it because I worked at a Marshall's, man, when I did work in travel. Okay, these zombie-like retail workers just going around and picking up those clothes that all these fucking ravenous clients, when they walk in, they're trying it out, they're throwing everything on the ground. It's a very different shopping experience than I can talk about Europe, right? People pick something up, they put it back, they go to the dressing room, then if they aren't buying it, they actually put it on the little clerk desk there. Except, dude, here it's like a bunch of fucking old ladies that just brought back 15 shirts that they want to get gift card for, so you can buy another 15 shirts, because that's everything they know. They can't do anything else. They don't know anything else. That's their life. It is a very strange place. I found a cross with an American flag and a Blue Lives Matter line down it. Okay, it's an incredible place, dude. The diversity of stickers you can see on different trucks and cars is also fucking epic. It's a wild place, man.
The irony of a cross with a Blue Lives Matter thing on it. It was the Blue Lives that crucified the guy. Stop it alone.
So, everybody, welcome back to the jet-lagged Deprogram podcast. It's very nice to see you again, smell you again, and feel you again. Before we start, I would like to say thank you to all our wonderful patrons, without whom none of this would be possible. If you want to be one of those goody-goody two-shoe fucking donating motherfuckers, please go to the link below, and for a small piece of your hard-earned cash, you can get plenty of benefits, like early episodes, 2 completely exclusive episodes, hangout sessions with us, and access to our very large exclusive Discord community. Now, with that being said, let's get right into today's episode, and that is the 100% correct true theory of great replacement. If you saw me in this room right now, you would see that I'm very replaced. Anyways, it's a bit of a serious conversation, so I'll put on my serious face. The manifesto of the El Paso shooter, who killed 22 people and injured 24 others at a Walmart in 2019, cites the attack as a response to a perceived Hispanic invasion of Texas. I don't know. What does Hispanic invasion mean? They just want to bring better food to the whites, but okay.
How do they invade a place that they're from?
Or Texas
was originally there.
Yeah, incredible, yeah. So, the shooter claimed he was defending his country from cultural and ethnic replacement. He was inspired by the Christchurch massacre in New Zealand, where the perpetrator also quoted the Great Replacement theory, and was in turn inspired by the infamous far-right militant who killed 77 people doing, quote, demographic warfare in Norway. Now, over the past decade, numerous mass killers worldwide have been motivated by a belief in the imminent genocide of white people. These morons, though diverse, Jesus Christ, man. These morons, though diverse in background, Jesus Christ, man, fucking killed me with that one. Okay. These morons, though diverse in background, share a belief in the fall of Western civilization. Say it. I know you want to say it.
No, you need to finish. You need to finish
and the extinction of white people, known
Inshallah.
as white replacement theory. But it's not just batshit terrorists who quote it. It's mainstream right-wing politicians, billionaires like Elon Musk who flirt with it, and the wider so-called moderate right, which dog whistles it to the masses as a means to fester a reactionary mentality and excuse away very real economic hardship as a consequence not of the capitalist class dichotomy, but a clash of cultures and peoples. So, where does this come from? Why is it gaining popularity? And how do we begin to understand it in the wider context of modern neoliberal capitalismus? Well, let's get right into it, shall we? Its beginnings are rather recent, though its core lies in more traditional, quote, white genocide myths. The Great Replacement theory, interestingly enough, was proliferated originally throughout 20th century francophone spaces, often...
See? I'm just like, I have a
no,
fucking,
but
I
they
have
say
a point.
20% less hate, okay? That is the party line. Do not fucking step out of it, okay? You're gonna get Trotsky'd up in this shit. 20th century francophone spaces, often cropping up in circles of race science and eugenics. It was specifically in 1973, however, that the conspiracy was repopularized in Jean Raspail's novel, which I'm intentionally going to mispronounce, Le Camp des Saints. The book crafts a dystopian tale in which a fleet of, quote, dark-skinned refugees from India set sail for France's shores. This eventually leads to the fall of Europe. Yep.
You forgot the best part about this. Of course, yeah, it eventually leads to the fall of Europe. No, the idea is that there's these dark-skinned refugees who set sail from India and go around collecting more brown and blacks from around the world, like doing pit stops. And then,
we gotta get all the browns, like Pokemon.
The book, by the way, it's like the white people are sending the white Europeans are sending like goodwill ships, like to these refugee boats essentially, to be like, oh, look, like, oh, we support you, the liberal, like, guilt, we love you, blah blah. The Catholic the Catholic Church and the Pope send like a special Christian envoy to these people, and at every turn these brown and black people supposedly either destroy the boat or like cannibalize the people that are sent. It's the craziest shit. Sorry, go on.
Oh, no worries. Jeez, I didn't know those additional details. Holy shit. But all of this gathering of black and brown people as Pokemon to change the white race forever eventually leads to the fall of Europe and the complete collapse of Western society. By the end of the book, the Queen of England is made to marry her son to a Pakistani wife, while New York's mayor has to share Gracie Mansion with 3 Harlem families. Yes, this is an actual book, and it actually inspired the modern Great Replacement theory. This is what we're talking about today. We are a very serious show. No, but unironically, it's a serious topic because so many fucking people believe it, so we actually have to talk about it. But the more you dive into this, the more you're like, are you guys okay? Like, are you okay? We know the answer to that, but still, it's worthwhile to ask. And also, very, very funny foreshadowing with the Queen of England is made to marry her son to a Pakistani wife, because the royal that they definitely didn't kill was dating, I believe, an Egyptian, right? So pretty,
exactly right.
Pretty wild, pretty wild. The Queen must have read the book. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few other tidbits of this book. I think we should honestly do like a dramatic reading, us 3, of the thing.
Hell yeah.
As a Patreon episode, if people are interested. 2 other tidbits. One of them, by the way, is when these refugees eventually land, they create basically like militias and go around to occupy basically white land, quote unquote. And there is some sort of like white defense, army that rises up basically to try to defend their lands. But for some reason, at the very last minute, they just all decide to lay down their arms in some sort of, again, is it liberal guilt? Is it them wanting to be cuckolded? I don't know what it is exactly, but that's just how it fucking ends. That's the book. That's the ending of the book. The second thing is this thing with the Gracie Mansion. I didn't know this. I had to look this up. Apparently, the mayor of New York lives in a special mansion called the Gracie Mansion, right? And the way that this guy tries to make, the fall of white American civilization, the way he pictures it is the fact that the mayor's house has to include the white mayor, of course, he's always white, and his family, along with 3 Harlem families, implying that they're black families. The death of white civilization just means having to share a space with black people. Do you see the? Yeah,
imagine the horror, dude. Imagine the horror. Oh my god!
Like, I have a hard time understanding how you can be this racist. Like, not to be that guy, but everybody has some subconscious biases, right? Here or there, even if you don't want to have them, sometimes they happen, right? Exactly right.
I love them, exactly. But there's bias, okay?
Exactly. No, I get it. But I've never in my life ever thought, like, I'll bring it to this point. I would not have an issue sharing space with French people. And I despise the French, okay? I can't imagine the next level of racism that you can get to. You physically can't stand. In fact, it's the idea, your entire ideological facade crumbles at the idea of having somebody of that opposite, whatever the fuck it may be, in your space.
Yeah, no, but in your reading of this text, do they explain, like, what the brown people's ideology is? Like, they're just conquerors. They want to discuss they're brown.
The way he frames it is less like they have a consistent ideological position, and more it's a mixture of, we hate white people and we want to destroy white civilization, quote unquote, whatever the fuck that means, what white people are and what white civilization is. But secondly, he portrays them as basically Lord of the Rings orcs. They don't have real motivations. They're just motivated by extreme like sexual lust and lust for violence and conflict. When they don't fight with the whites, they fight between each other. It's a very dehumanizing presentation.
Literally, like I know you can apply this to literally every continent. I'm not even going to say almost every, but since it's the whites throwing hands with this book, okay, filled with lust and aggression towards each other and the eternal drive to conquer other things, is a key trait of non-whites, said the fucking European. God, have you ever heard about the 30-year war? 30 years! 30 fucking years! Not a stop! Not for a second! That civilization's still like, look at all those guys! They really want to rape and pillage those guys!
If you wanna get an idea of what the European soul yearns for, read the what's his name? Christopher Columbus's right-hand man when they landed in Cuba. His diary entries of the slaves they kept on the ship, the female slaves specifically. I will trigger warning galore. But it's not a pretty sight. Please go on.
Just like most fascist dogma, it starts from fairy tales. But if enough people believe them, then, as we know, they become real. Every fascist mythos centers around a simple premise: finding alternative explanations for the degradation of society. Economic downturns, criminality, state instability, and so on are never addressed through the materialist method, aka seeing that the current problems facing society stem from an array of systematic problems. Stuff like, what's the main motivating factor for production, labor, social cohesion, and so on. Instead of seeing the profit motive, imperialism, rising economic inequality, and the wholesale expansion of soulless capital as the driving force behind the ever-repeating crises in which we find ourselves in, the fascist must create, invent an alternative means through which to explain away current societal ills. This works wonders for the masses who lack what we call class consciousness, the ability to understand that at the core of all struggle in all systems, including this one, lies the battle between those who own and those who work. Understandably, people who haven't yet come to these scientific facts simply see the world around them falling apart without being able to really comprehend why. And this is exactly where the fascist, with his wacky fairy tales, comes in. For the Nazi, it was the Jewish conspiracy and the wholesale manipulation of so-called inferior peoples. For the KKK, it was white genocide and black liberation, eventually leading to the removal of white men from the helm of American society. For the, reactionary red pill movement, it's the woman reaching parity with men and therefore no longer being beholden to them. For COVID deniers, for example, it was lizard people autisming us up with the vaccines, bro. It doesn't matter how wacky or relatively down to earth these theories are. At the core, it's just a bunch of fog keeping you blind while preaching liberation. So let's get back to the current fog, the trendy fog, the replacement fog. In 2010, another fucking French are just winning today, okay? Renaud Camus, not to be confused with the late absurdist Albert Camus, of course, reinvigorated the great replacement theory with his book De l'Innocence, warning of the replacement of white Europeans by Hakim and Hakim's cousins, also known as Middle Easterners and North African peoples. This text ended up significantly influencing current white supremacist discourse, and it fuels the so-called identitarian movement, which we talked about actually in, I believe, 2 episodes back about fascists know your enemy, I believe. They advocate for ethnically and racially homogenous societies and view racial mixing as a threat to societal instability, dude. Nobody wants us to mate Hakim, like, Jesus Christ. But jokes aside, I guess it's important to state, even though if you're listening to this, you probably know it, and I can't believe I actually have to say this, but race is a made-up thing. Yes, it's unfortunately a very real thing that impacts people's lives nowadays, but it's only like that because we, as an idiotic-ass species, made it to be so. All humans share 99% of the same DNA, and pretending otherwise is simply wrong. Focusing on simple facial features or skin pigmentation as a reason for superiority or inferiority is in no way different to, and I know this is a cliche, but it is in no way different to calling someone superior because of their finger length or feet size or how hairy their chest is. It's just fucking absolutely insane.
I'm just gonna specify just a few things on this point. Exactly what Hugo said. Race is a social construct, but the consequences of said social construct are very real, and these impact society throughout all levels. That's number one. Number two, I made a few videos about race a million years ago, but I really delved deep into what these races call human biodiversity, which is their latest basically cringe term for quote-unquote scientific racism, where their strategy has always being to continuously move back the goalposts. It originally started with, white people have bigger brains than black people, for example, but then that was disproven. So instead they say different parts of white people's brains have different amount of gray matter compared to that of black people's brains, which was then disproved, till they get to the point where they're talking about individual genes and having to refer to highly specialized literature, and at every single point they're disproven, but they just keep moving the goalposts back and getting so in-depth into the topic that it becomes completely out of approachability of even laymen. Some of the stuff is so into the current medical research that even I have, it goes over my head even, and I'm in the fucking field, right? But through all my fucking research, there's literally nothing to substantiate it, and all their arguments are basically either they refer to a few of their token like quote unquote specialists who are completely ostracized from the field and have no credentials anymore, or they basically cherry pick facts from completely irrelevant literature. I remember one time there's this claim that used to be made, which is the greatest predictive rate for success of a black person in the United States is how much European admixture they have, which is complete nonsense. And the way that they base this is off of like type 2 diabetes research that's just so happened to have this as one of its measures, one of its variables. But the stupidity of, first of all, using one bit of research that has nothing to do with the claims you're making, so you can't infer these things, you have to study them separately. But aside from this, if you zoom out even more, if, for example, like 5% European admixture is what is the difference between, not finishing high school versus becoming a PhD, then what about people with 99% European admixture? Like, white people. Why the fuck are there poor whites? Why are there uneducated whites? Why are there stupid whites? Yeah, these people are so fucking in this bubble that they can't actually zoom out and realize how ridiculous the things that they believe really are. The TLDR race is complete bullshit, and exactly like Hugo said, the things that people judge, the phenotypic things that people can actually see, skin texture and skin color and hair and whatnot, these things are literally just skin deep. That's about it. Otherwise, we're basically all the fucking same.
How do you even this is just, I guess, a fucking no melanin having guy asking it, and it's cliche again, but how is anyone racist for more than 5 minutes?
Right. Don't ask me.
Literally more than 5 minutes. You're like, oh my God, they look different. They must be different. Okay, Google. Oh, they're not. Okay. You interact with them. Oh, they're not. Stops being racist. Literally, that's it. How more than 5 minutes? How
It's ignorance and not mixing these people. The people who are most racist, look at, for example, in Europe, the most racist people, or in the United States too, the most racist people are not people in the most multicultural areas, not in the center of London or whatever in New York. The most racist people are in these buttfuck middle of nowhere small villages in Eastern Europe or in the southern United States, which is all solely white people. They've never interacted with somebody of a different color or heritage or culture, and they just see shit on the media or on the internet, or whatever the fuck, and they just internalize it. It's like, oh, all black people are criminals, all Jews are this, all Arabs are that.
Exactly. That leads us to, I guess, the finishing of my section here. Different demagogues give the great replacement myth different spins, and that's very important to note. It's not about race, it's about culture, the way Tucker phrases it. A much more, let's say, I would say, a smart approach to complete lunacy, but you get my point. Or
tell them define culture.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Or it's not about race, it's about protecting our values, the way the French far right phrases it. And sometimes they will go in so far as being like, oh, we need to protect our gay people from the invading conservative Muslim hordes, etc.
Until we stop immigration, and then we stop putting the gay people on camps.
Absolutely, fuck those motherfuckers, okay? Or it's not about the German or the American white man or the Brit. It's about preserving the European identity we all share, even though we wage like 6,500 wars to make sure we're never referred to as one people, but we'll talk about that now and so on and so on and so on.
Put two Balkan people from across the border in one room and watch the most wild racial slurs and dehumanization you've ever seen. Shared European identity. These people can barely fucking act cordial over a football game.
Yeah.
What fucking shit?
Pretty much. Even though, ironically, if you put them in there's some way for you to combat their accent, and you forbid them from saying what nationality they are, they're going to be like best friends. But the second the internalized hatred is introduced to them and they tell them, hey, this guy is Macedonian and this guy's Bulgarian, they'll proceed to ram bottles up each other's asses and not in a pleasant way. Okay. Let me ask you then, my evil invader Hakeem, do you guys really want to replace us so bad? Even if I was to imagine myself as part of something, I don't know, I'm immediately laughing, something called the white people, which to this day I'm so baffled by, but okay. Even if I was, let me be serious, even if I was a part of the white community, are we really getting replaced, us good old whites?
If some deep listeners of the Deprogram remember, somebody in the community made a Hakeem racial map where basically they collected all my opinions on who is white and who isn't, and made a fucking map of Europe.
I need to see that. Holy shit!
It was on the what's it called, Reddit subreddit a while back. A while back being like a year and a half ago. But anyways, the Balkanoids are not white. Italians are not white. Greeks are not white. Okay, have you seen a Greek person? My God, I think like whiteness starts maybe in the northern tip of Slovenia, maybe, and then like kind of like Western Northern Europe. But yeah. Anyways, you asked me a very important question, which is the on the invasion bit. Yes, absolutely, 10,000%. It is our sacred duty to outbreed the white race with our superior sperm, which makes white women tremble everywhere with delight and anticipation. This is a point, actually, I want to link it, like I'm making the joke. But so much of this is rooted in not only racism, but sexism, which is almost like a secondary foundation of this nonsense. All white genocide bullshit kind of faults the white woman because, quote unquote, the white woman. Again, we're going to get into what the fuck a white person is. But it faults the white woman.
Fellow whites. I'm sorry.
Exactly. It's like these two things, like, oh, the Jews have convinced the white women that, what's it called? Contraceptive pills. They should be taken. And as a result, they're not having white babies. That's number one. And on the other pillar, it's like, oh, the Jews have convinced white women that they want black cock or something, right? Or brown or yellow or whatever else, just non-white, which removes all sorts of agency of white women because nowhere, if you read all their stuff, it's all anti-woman and it all blames white women. In one way, they're trying to say, oh, we want to protect the white woman, but only if she's, quote unquote, making the correct decision, which is what these fascists and white nationalists want. But if a white woman were to have agency of her own, opinions of her own, and want to, for example, be partners with somebody who is not white, then immediately, oh, race traitor, this and that and that. And it's just a very interesting approach to the sex relations within this bullshit theory. But let's move on.
It's all reactionary white men at the end of the day stricken to its base, like make their ideology revolve around is the white woman's vagina.
Exactly right. Which, hilariously enough, you say this, but also the most recent wave of white nationalists have like made exceptions for Asian women.
Yeah,
so it's like, oh yeah, we need to protect the race and the purity of the race, but like this Thai lady is
or Zeke Kyle, brother. But Jesus, did you see Ice Spice? Holy shit!
Yeah,
brother.
my God, yeah. There's this Twitter post where it's like, I'm racist, but goddamn, it's a black woman. It's a black woman from behind.
God.
Anyways, but yeah, no, we're gonna get to this. Okay. You'll notice a few things overlap with these bullshit theories. Great replacement, white genocide, all this. The things that overlap are issues of fertility rates, immigration, demographic crises of different kinds. We can start with the fertility rate because this is the core issue, or the core point with immigration, particularly in Europe, but also in the United States. The claim is like this: the Jews, or if they don't want to be so explicit as to say the Jews, because all of these are also firmly rooted in anti-Semitism as well as Islamophobia and other racisms. If they don't want to say the Jews, then they can say, "Oh, liberal elites." And some people are just outright clear with it. They say, "Oh, it's the Jews in collaboration with the liberal elites. They have a more developed theory," but they believe that there is a importation, quote unquote, of immigrants, non-European, non-white immigrants into European spaces, either being in Europe itself as a continent or in North America. And the point of this is to bring them in, and particularly the women, but also the men, will have higher rates of reproduction, higher fertility rates, and over the generations, they will crowd out the native, quote unquote, Europeans until they're a minority in their own countries, and then they eventually completely disappear. One aspect of them is like these immigrants never will mix with white people, which is not the history of anything anywhere. People always mix when they're in the same spaces. But some more, I guess, progressive racists like to think that the white race will be too intermixed with these new immigrants to still be a quote unquote pure white European, whatnot. And as a result, it's the same thing. Basically, they're also being replaced and quote unquote genocided. Before we get into the actual fertility rate stupidity, it's not genocide because nobody is fucking dying. Every genocide across all of time was made, the express purpose was to limit births and to limit the growth of said communities, limit their opportunities economically, socially, politically, so on and so forth. Like, this is a very basic foundation. That is not happening anywhere in North America or in Europe. No European people are being killed or culled or thrown into concentration camps or having their rights politically or civilly or whatever else limited. White people can do whatever Europeans can do whatever the fuck they want in their own countries, just as they've always been able to do, basically within the bounds of the law. So this is already nonsense. There's no genocide because people are not being crowded out, they're not being killed, they're not being replaced, and conditions of their erasure are not being imposed on them. If you were to claim that the demographic crisis is a quote-unquote condition being imposed on them, then we're getting to that point soon. To the fertility rate issue. If you look at the research across the board, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You could be in the Central African Republic, you can be in Switzerland, you can be in Canada, you can be in Australia, you can be in Thailand. It doesn't fucking matter. Fertility rates are usually, when comparing immigrant populations to native populations, are either equal on arrival or slightly higher at first, because these people, when they immigrate, tend to be of childbearing years. but that then eventually quickly normalizes, or lower because it takes time to actually start, your life in this new immigrant country, as an immigrant in a new country, so they kind of put off having children. So in all situations, either it's lower, either it's around equal, or it's slightly higher, but then very quickly equalizes within the immigrant person's lifetime, by the way. So this, you don't have to wait for the second generation. But if you were to be as charitable to the fascist position as you'd want to be, which you shouldn't ever, then in this case, it's usually by the second generation. The fertility rate would normalize to basically that of the receiving country. By the way, fertility rate is intensity of childbearing. It's not the actual amount of kids people have. You have to understand the exact definition for this. But what does this mean on paper? This means that basically within the same lifetime of the immigrant woman usually, but it doesn't matter, the immigrant person, coming into the recipient country, or by the time their child is an adult, their fertility rate and their growth, their rate of reproduction basically is around the same as that of the receiving country. So no replacement could ever fucking happen. If you actually read the words of the cringe Frenchoids, right, they believe that the quote-unquote great replacement is supposed to happen within a single generation or maximum 2 generations, meaning like the god knows how many tens of millions of French people would be completely crowded out and replaced within the space of like 40 years, which is ridiculous. They base it on the idea that's like, take for example, like in the Ivory Coast, women have 6 children, and they'll come and move to France, and they're gonna have 6 children
as
and
well.
all of their 6 children will have 6. There'll be exponential growth, exactly, for 14 generations, and then afterwards you're gonna have 600 million people of Ivory Coast descent in France. It's incredibly fucking stupid, but these people genuinely believe this shit. Like, I explained the foundation of it now, but also all the research is basically what I told you. I'm not going to give you exact stats. I'm going to actually have a video coming out on this if you're really interested in those. But the TLDR is, this is what all the research shows. Now, moving aside from this, though, when you talk about, these, what's it called, like liberal elites or these Jews, they're bringing in people into Europe to increase, immigrant populations to crowd out whites. Why is that the first explanation they come to for why immigration is being pulled into Europe? Like in some countries, for example, like in Austria, immigration began in the 60s or 50s even, right? Like post-World War II. What is it in these incredibly diverse political situations across all these countries that unites the quote-unquote immigration goal? Very simply, it is the requirement for labor. We're going to get to the demographic issues very soon, but the vast majority of Europe is in demographic crisis, which is something that's met by practically all highly industrialized and developed economies. The idea being is that the more industrialized you are, the more into the fucking capitalist puddle you are, the more atomized and individualized populations are, and the more expensive life is. As a result, having huge communities with many children becomes very difficult and expensive, if not impossible, right? Also, people, because they want to have good jobs and make good income, because everything's getting so expensive, spend a lot of time in study and working and whatnot, so they delay childbearing to, down the line. The further you delay childbearing, the less amount of children you can have, right? The fertility window of both men and women, but specifically women, is limited. It's not, you can't have kids when you're fucking 60, 70, 80. Because of all this, the amount of children that are being produced is lower and lower, and the population is aging higher and higher. The thing is that these highly developed economies need people to continue the development of said economies. They need labor to continue fucking mines and factories and service jobs and even this like quote unquote mundane jobs, cleaning and maintenance and stuff like that. Every single facet of the economy needs people. And if there aren't enough people, and even if you had the most pro-people policies to have children, even if you were to institute them, it would take 20 years at the very minimum to increase birth rates until a point where this new labor pool of indigenous white Europeans could be used to maintain the economy. You still need people in the meantime, right? Assuming these people first policies even come to play, which in the vast majority of Europe, they aren't coming to play. And a few places they are, like in Poland and Hungary, they're massive failures. So you still need to fucking maintain the economy. That's why they're bringing in people. If you really want to talk about replacement, well, the UN has already done massive fucking research on this to kind of, for their own demographic purposes, they've done this research, but just kind of like a side note, I guess, to dunk on these people. They mentioned the fact that, for example, Germany, if you really want to replace them, not only replace German population, but to maintain and completely fulfill the labor shortage of Germany, you need something to the tune of tens of millions of people imported into Germany, which is logistically impossible, right, over the next couple of decades. It is a literal impossibility without causing significant... Every receiving country has to, have a certain period where they kind of like accommodate people who are immigrating into the country. They need to find.
But don't you? Bullshit. But don't you know every immigrant loves to live in sewer and lie? You know?
Of course, yeah, exactly right. All they do is eat hot chip, charge their phone.
Yeah,
exactly right. So yeah, like it's a completely mistaken and false premise. But moving beside the requirement of foreign labor and demographic crisis, we're gonna get to that again. These ideas of white replacement, white genocide, have really taken off over something that I think is incredibly ridiculous. The sheer numbers of quote unquote immigration in Switzerland or in Greece or in any of these places in Europe, just in general. Actually, Hugo, do you want to guess the number?
I don't know. Give me a window.
Between 5% and 30%. Guess the amount of people who are foreign-born in the EU.
15?
15%.
Yes.
Final answer?
Final answer?
These people are frothing at the mouth. They want to start up concentration camps. They want to start the ovens. They want to send people back to the oceans or wherever the fuck, right? All of Western civilization is collapsing over 6%.
Jesus fucking Christ.
6%
oh my fucking
of the
God.
EU population.
But it looks like there's so many. Oh, wait. Is that because I don't notice when somebody's white, but I really fucking notice when somebody dresses different or it has a darker pigmentation? Holy fucking shit.
Yeah.
Is it bias? Oh my God. No. It's Paris is no longer Paris. Remember what the Americans like to say?
Yeah. Oh my God. By the way, this is also very rich of a continent that has colonized and basically settled in every single part of the world, doing the things that they claim are being done to them. These fascists, these white nationalists, the things that they did to other people in Algeria, in Vietnam, in North America, everywhere. They did the shit that they're claiming is being done to them. The hypocrisy is sickening. But aside from this. Even if you were to be incredibly gracious and count in even, like all sorts of non-EU arrivals from every possible stripe, you can maximum get to the number of 8.59%. This 6% or 9%, doesn't matter, includes, by the way,
Let's even say 15. Yeah. How is that a fucking...
But hold on.
The main problem of society, bro.
Hold on. 8.5 to 9%, all right, within the EU, which is foreign-born. This also includes non-EU white people. This includes Belarusians, Serbians, Ukrainians. These are also part of the... So they're not... You understand, the actual total number of people who are not quote-unquote white is insignificantly small. Especially compared to all the countries that people are immigrating from. If you're to consider India or China or the Arab world or Sub-Saharan Africa, the sheer amount of diversity of these places in cultures and languages and religions and everything else. In comparison to this, the EU is already basically a series of ethnostates, plus minus, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's such an incredibly silly thing to get so tight wound about. But you know, we're getting to the reasons why. The current political relevance of this bullshit over 6%, 9%, whatever you want to say, has been reiterated, like Hugo said, by Tucker Carlson, by Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, by Macron even, by fucking Elon Musk, all that stuff, and various far-right parties. And all this is basically settled into anti-immigration sentiment, basically. Some people don't like the fact that there's a brown or black person walking down the street just minding their business, and as a result, this means that white people are gonna be fucking, genocided and gotten rid of. As we mentioned, the idea is because they want to maintain the nation or the culture or way of life. Let's just kind of deconstruct this. But before we deconstruct this, let's deconstruct what whiteness and white people are. If you were to get a bunch of people, 100 people, let's say, all across Europe, and ask them, what the fuck is a white person? Or what are European values? Or what are this? You're going to get 100 different answers, right? Yeah. At the very best, with a very broad brush, you can kind of define whiteness as the skin tone plus certain liberal values that are like post-Enlightenment liberal values plus a Christian cultural background. Fair enough, you can kind of lump all of these, but the liberal values bit, vast majority of fascists are not interested in. They want to completely dismantle the liberal state and create something entirely different. The right of agency and choice and whatnot, particularly for white women, they want to completely take away. Yeah. They're against LGBT and religious plurality, which is also a cornerstone of liberalism. At least they pretend it is. All these things they want to take away completely. Otherwise, they want to abolish other stuff as well. Within liberalism, there's supposed to be a certain sentiment of tolerance of different cultures, blah, blah, blah. And these post-Enlightenment ideas, and these fascists completely disagree with. So European values, in the sense of like liberalism and liberal values, they completely reject. When it comes to the Christian identity, the vast majority of Europe is no longer really Christian in that way. Yeah, they kind of have like a veneer of Christianity. It's different in Eastern and Southeast Europe for sure, but the places where the quote-unquote white or white genocide replacement is most popular is in the northeast, Western Europe, right?
Yeah.
And these places, people are not Christian. Churches are empty, right?
And sorry for interrupting you. And even if they are Christian, they're like, "What, you want me to sit in the same fucking room with a goddamn Anglican, with a goddamn Protestant, with a goddamn papist? Goddamn you, you know?" Like,
yeah, exactly right. It's a very contradictory idea to pretend like, oh, it's some Christian background, but what is this Christianity? What is this Christian like culture supposed to be based on if you're not actually tied to the religion, right?
now they're starting to call shit like Christian atheism and shit, Christian secularism. It's just fucking dog whistles.
And all this is just to counterpose and be like, we're not. It's just anti-Islam.
Yeah, we're not those guys. It's Islamophobia.
That's the entire purpose.
Purely.
There's nothing about it that they can you know. If they truly were Christian origin, they'd actually have more. The quote unquote Christian heritage of Europe has more in common with Islam than it does with, you know, like this weird like atheist / agnostic liberal consumerist faith that is permeated Europe right now.
My favorite moment is I follow a bunch of these different like semi alt-right channels on TikTok because you know, this is what I do
just
as a job.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I want to see how they think, right? And my favorite was, you know, this guy posted like a video of very like Orthodox church vibes, like, you know, these white blue-eyed Slavs like praying and then being, you know, very connected to their Lord and their tradition and so on, and he posts this, and then all the comments, because, you know, very traditional, and literally up until like the 70s, 80s, most Orthodox women like would wear scarves on their head, and these women, you know, during morning liturgy, like these are probably like they woke up at 5 a.m. to go and, you know, to hear the stories from the priest, etc., to take the holy bread and the wine, blah blah blah, and almost all of them are covered, right? And the comments are filled with Western white supremacists, right? Like, what the fuck? This is not our culture. Why do they all look like hijabis, bro? Like it's breaking their brain. It's because they don't even know what they believe in at the end of the day. Because as you said, it's such a loose construction that at the same time it's a great weakness, but unfortunately at the same time it's for them potentially a great strength, because they can throw their cobwebs at seemingly at cultures that are seemingly different, and use the most reactionary elements in them to say, no, we're actually the same, only until, you know, the clock doesn't tick at midnight, and then, you know, it's the turn the turn for the people that get shot are the ones that are slightly different than you, because you already shot all the ones that are very different than you.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And it's genuinely like, on that point, it's like, oh, why are they all covered? Why are they all hijabis, basically? I remember there's this thing where some part of Italy, there's some racist politician. He was like, oh, I want to put in a hijab ban. And some other like a lefty politician basically came to him or to parliament or wherever the fuck the debate, like he's making his point, and he was carrying with him a portrait of the Virgin Mary. And he was like, "What is she wearing?"
Yeah.
It's like you're talking about like the Christian heritage of Italy, and you want to like, oh, we're a Christian country, we don't want these Muslims. But it's incredibly silly. But moving aside from this, also, when you talk about
talking about it's so stupid. Yeah. How do you have this ideology for more than 5 minutes? Sorry,
don't ask me, man. I genuinely cannot fucking answer you. But the idea of maintaining, for example, the purity of the nation of whites, of having only white people. Again, what the fuck is a white person? Because if you noticed, Russians have seemingly overnight become not white after they invade Ukraine, according to, right? They become, and
Ukrainians became white. They're
exactly
no longer
right.
construction workers. Now they're an advanced society of super Aryans. Yeah.
And just wait until Ukraine completely crumbles and that war's lost. And all of a sudden, all these Ukrainians who are now flooded Europe because their country is destroyed, the anti-immigrant sentiment will be turned against them, and all these Asiatic fucking Scythian hordes, they don't deserve deserve to be, in Europe. These are they're mating with white women. These fucking, right? All this shit.
It's already begun. Literally today, I read in the Czech Republic. Last year, it had their top 10 most quote unquote liked ethnicities. Had Ukraine somewhere in, correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere in the top 6 or 7. And now only a year has passed. There's a lot of Ukrainians in the Czech Republic. Now they're in the bottom 10 Ukrainians themselves. Yeah, exactly. So like it's
exactly right. And this is the same thing. Within the United States, Jews were considered not white for the longest time. Now they are. Polish people, Irish people, Italians, Spaniards. In the US, for example, being white passing, quote unquote, as a Hispanic person is enough to make you, quote unquote, white, but otherwise not. And some people have different. It's completely, these are nebulous and empty classifications that you can't justify in any meaningful way, aside from just saying, I don't want people who are not of this particular nation in here, which you still have to kind of like rationalize in some way. The way that they go to rationalize it is, the culture of the country. The vast majority of European cultures, when you remove the what's it called, Christianity from it, I mean actual like people who are practicing the religion, I mean just regular people, vast majority of Europeans who aren't Christian or are actively, hostile to Christianity, which is my experience dealing with Europeans, but maybe I'm painting with a broad brush. These people will then settle their culture on the language, right? A few traditions on holidays, usually linked also to like a Christian background, Christmas and Easter and this kind of stuff, and some like food and some very basic art stuff. This is what they kind of lump as a culture. Now, can't somebody kind of assimilate into these things? Right? Somebody can speak the language perfectly. Somebody can work in your country. Somebody can take part in these celebrations to this or that extent, right? They could be, well aware of your cultural traditions and maybe even take part of them if it's music, art, or something. They can enjoy your foods and probably even contribute to it by bringing in new spices and whatnot, all that kind of stuff. Would they then not be part of this nation? They're completely barred just because they're, right? And this is, by the way, the idea of a lot of these white nationalists and fascists. You could be a 5th generation, 10th generation, what the fuck, in Germany. If you're not white, or in France, or in Britain, or wherever else. If you're not white, then you aren't part of that country. Which, by that own logic, means that basically every settled colony made by Europeans is basically like has no foundation to stand on and should be completely returned to the actual indigenous people, because these people can never be quote unquote indigenous no matter how many generations they spend in said country. The difference being is most of the people who move to Germany, even if they have a different faith, for example, will speak German and work with German coworkers and in German like cities and workplaces, will engage in German culture and whatnot, will contribute to German art and German food in their own ways. The European settled colonies did not do this where they end up settling. They destroy the indigenous culture. They completely eliminate the populations. They eliminate the culture. They eliminate the languages. They do not do anything to contribute to it. In fact, they just kind of pave it over and then establish just, a little bubble of quasi-European, imported from the old country. Yeah. Right? It's incredibly ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That's the only word you can have for it. It's fucking ridiculous. So when we deal with, the white people, it's a nebulous thing that's very difficult to define. And even if you define it, different people will disagree, particularly fascists, who have incredibly exclusive definitions, who fight with each other and will even try to kill each other over, you're not white enough. We move that aside. Then you have the culture, which, again, if you assimilate and blah, blah, and be able to, right, or at least integrate. Assimilation is a different process, but at least you integrate into the nation, speak the language, and work and whatnot. If that also isn't enough to qualify you, then that's just based in racism, again. The way of life things, again, are very nebulous ideas, because if you're integrated into society, what else is left? What, just the skin bleaching? Is that what's left, right? At the end of the day, the point I want to tie to this is these white nationalists or idiots of any stripe who claim that they want to protect the nation or culture or way of life, they're protecting an idea that doesn't exist. The vast majority of modern Europeans eat sushi and Arabic food and kebab and this kind of stuff. They have relations, both friendly and romantic, with people of every kind of background, right? There's plenty of white women who are sleeping with brown and black men in Europe. There's plenty of brown and black women who are in relationships with white men as well in Europe. When it comes to languages, the vast majority of people who immigrate to Europe end up speaking the local languages and integrating into the culture one way or another. The vast majority of these people agree with some level of like liberal concepts of plurality and multiculturalism and exchange of cultures, all this kind of stuff, which fascists disagree with. What fucking idea are they trying to protect? It doesn't exist. That's the general kind of like tying it together. They create a mythical conception of the state and the folk, like the Volksgemeinschaft, the community of people, right? Who are all white, all this kind of stuff, and then they put it on a pedestal. But all of this has never existed, at least not in the way they're conceptualizing it.
It's D&D in real life. I will never continue. I will never stop calling it. It's IRL D&D. Like, there's elves, there's high elves, there's orcs, etc., etc. We'll ascribe this to these people, that to those people. We'll then ascribe one of the literal, like, fucking fairy tale races we just created positive aspects. Then we'll ascribe negative aspects to the other one, and then we will call for a clash of civilizations, because God forbid you fucking read like at the smallest passage from fucking Marx, okay?
Yeah, exactly right. I think the final point is to just kind of like lay the icing of contradiction on all this. The reason that immigration has happened to North America or Europe or wherever else, vast majority of the time, it's either because of a desire of capital for cheap labor and access to cheap labor, which is required to maintain the economic development of these countries. And this kind of like links to my point. When you really push these people, the white nationalists or fascists or whatever, on why you don't want immigration, they realize very quickly that saying I don't want people who just look different to me to be in this country, they very quickly realize that this is an untenable position, because it's just hatred for hatred's sake. There's no rationale behind it. So they have to pull back and be like, oh well, immigration will result in the depression of wages here. So native workers will be harmed. Native white workers will be harmed by immigration. But all the research is against you. The vast majority of research shows between different ranges either a negligible positive effect on wages, or a negligible negative effect, or a net zero, so the wages aren't affected by immigration. The few times there is some sort of like job altering situation where immigrants will take jobs of native workers, which doesn't happen because the operational spheres of different labor markets are different for immigrants and native workers. Immigrants are usually tied to more quote-unquote low-skilled labor, and the ones who are educated do not have as easy penetration into the field that they're educated in, all that kind of stuff. But moving aside from that, the reason that for example, company or whatever, or industry will hire immigrant labor is because they want to intentionally underpay them and exploit them. So the fault isn't the fact that our immigrants are coming, it's the fault that the capitalists are wanting to make higher profits, right? You're attacking the wrong enemy. Quote unquote enemy. They're not an enemy. In fact, you two are supposed to have work solidarity with each other against the capitalists. That's the point of having class analysis. And that's number one. That's, by the way, cheap labor. Of course, in many European countries, or in North America, particularly in Canada, there's also a really high requirement or need for highly skilled labor, which is missing from these economies. And that's also a reason for immigration. In Europe, basically, and I always make this example, hospitals all across Europe are filled with immigrant doctors. Canada and the United States, they are filled with immigrant doctors. Why is that? Because the local country does not produce enough physicians, right? For a variety of reasons. And as a result, they have to rely on this. I believe the EU has the highest OECD average almost of quote-unquote foreign-born people within their healthcare systems. So this is also to fill a market need that cannot be filled by domestic production. Yeah, so that's another reason for immigration. It's not because, we want to eliminate white people. Number two, the idea about, immigration is a net drain on social resources. They're a net drain on our tax income. They make lives worse for all the native people because they soak up all the tax money. This is absolutely fucking absurd. In fact, the research is completely in the opposite. There are direct economic benefits of foreign labor, either in, for example, increasing the flexibility of the labor market and increasing profit margins for local industry, or by increasing consumption, because these people have their own consumption patterns, and increased population means more consumption, which is the fucking very cog that runs capitalism, or it allows for higher innovation rates. The few times when you see that there is a slightly negative, which is almost always negligible, economic effect by immigration, it's almost exclusively only in the very immediate aftermath of immigration. So the first 5, 10, 15 years. But then afterwards, there is a net benefit to the economy. Once these people enter into the labor market, they're educated in the local, language and routines and whatnot. All that. So that's also a bullshit point. And when it comes to the demographic crisis we spoke about earlier, the reason the people say just white people, or in our countries, our European country, we're not having enough children. The solution isn't to bring in foreign people is to have more children now. The thing is that, as we mentioned, life is expensive and gets even more difficult, particularly with the high specialization required to enter educational institutions and then subsequently into the labor market in European countries or highly developed industrial countries, no matter where you are, that it's kind of becomes difficult to have kids, and a lot of them at the same time as you just want to fucking live. So again, as we mentioned, the economy needs to run, so you bring in people. If you do want to increase birth rates of your local European country, well, you do it the way that Hungary and Poland, whatever, try to do, where they give tax breaks and they try to give stipends and all this kind of nonsense. But at the end of the day, and if you look at the Hungarian or Polish examples, this has not been it has not worked, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many tax breaks you give, raising children is fucking difficult, and the requirements of life are not easy or cheap. And of course, this is also precluding the final fact, which really needs to be the core of all this shit. The reason people are immigrating, the reason there are Syrians in Europe, all right, is not because there is a conspiracy to replace white people and eliminate them and blah, blah, blah. It's because NATO and American aligned policy destroyed their country. And as a result, these people had nowhere else to go. So eventually, they went to Europe. Oh, but they could have gone to other Arab countries. They have. Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Turkey. Turkey's not an Arab country, but you know what I mean. Lebanon and Iraq. All these places have taken hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Syrian people. But a few more, basically, in the grand scheme of things, have made their way to Europe. These people would have never stepped foot in Europe had the Syria still been stable. And the greatest example of this is the Syrian existence within Europe was basically negligible, if not non-existent, prior to the civil war in Syria. Same thing with Iraq, same thing with Afghanistan, same thing with across Africa when it comes to French, the immigration into France from Western and Sub-Saharan Africa. The reason these places, the reason immigration occurs from these places is either because of wars directly instigated by European and European aligned foreign policy, or because of destabilization as a result of imperialism, unequal exchange, colonialism that has systematically underdeveloped and overexploited these countries and resulted in them basically not having any sort of meaningful opportunities that could be built aside from immigrating basically to the imperial core. This is a mistaken and dangerous theory that sets the foundation for basically limiting civil rights in the liberal sense, right? And then eventually even genocide, which is what happened every time white nationalists or fascists ever got to power. And most of all, by the way, the genocide that they want to carry out against brown and black people is always trumped and exceeded by the white genocide that fascists themselves create, because they go to war against other white people, killing tens of millions of them in the fucking process, right? The biggest L of a fucking policy or strategy I've ever fucking heard. I'm done.
And there is absolutely nothing to add, I believe. If you believe in white replacement so much, don't go kill people you define as non-white, and then they'll not come to your country, because
Get a girlfriend.
Nobody wants to live in fucking Wisconsin. Okay, thank you very much.
Exactly right. Just go look. If you believe in white replacement, how about you have some more white kids? All right, go try.
Yeah.
Jesus
Have
Christ.
some fucking kids. Okay. Jesus
God,
Christ.
fucking...
Actually, no. If you believe in white replacement, please don't have kids. That was bad. Yeah. Poor kids.
Yeah,
Jesus
they're not
Christ.
happy. They're not gonna. These people go tell a quote unquote cosmopolitan modern European woman, hey, yeah, I want you to be in the home barefoot and pregnant, have 8 of my kids, and believe in this like weird quasi pagan but also somehow Christian idea of walking through wheat fields and shit like that. And she's gonna be like, what the fuck? I want to go eat sushi. What the fuck are you on about?
There was a very good old video with I think it was in Sweden, and there was like anti-fascists and fascists, and I remember the anti-fascists screaming at the fascists, your kids will one day be like us. Your kids will one day be like us. And I think on that note, we can conclude today's very, very interesting episode. Thank you very much, everyone who's joined, and a special thank you to all of our patrons, without whom we would not be able to do any of this. If you would like to support this show, and if you would like us to stay as independent and based and anti-white replacement build, then do consider becoming a patron right now. For a few of your hard-earned bucks, you will receive plenty of benefits, including an exclusive Discord channel, 2 exclusive episodes, 1 week early releases, direct chats with us, and plenty more while supporting the show. With that being said,
this has been the Deprogram. I'm Hakim.
I'm Ugopnik.
How about you replace these nuts?
Fuck you!